Folks, we've got some Sun and Moon jazz remixes from Mewmore, soundtracking what is indeed the stupidest problem currently affecting online competitive singles. Now, I don't want to make any claims on where this stands all time just yet, especially because we've got some really dumb stuff in our history, but I personally feel pretty validated because I've said for years that competitive Pokemon players hate playing competitive Pokemon. They avoid it as much as possible, but it's never been so literal as now. So some context. Scheduling a game of Pokemon against your opponent in whatever tournament does not sound like it should be something of note, but the competitive Pokemon player is also peerless in making mountains out of molehills, and they will drag the tiniest little thing and gorge it until it explodes. So that's what we've got today. The process of scheduling and then actually making the game happen has come to a very strange point. It used to be that, it's already a pain to arrange a game between, opponents' schedules, real or feigned, and time zones. Anyone who's ever played online tournaments is an expert in time zones because you have to calculate them to figure out when you're going to get it done. It's enough of a pain if you're in the same time zone, depending on who you're facing, but there are some time zones you just dread. Personally, when I'm living in Europe, I hate playing Americans because they hate playing anything earlier than, early afternoon, and then it's already night for me, and I hate playing at night. But, this is something you can generally grin and bear, right? However, back in the day, there were no real precautions, nothing set in stone about, someone who would kind of tool you around in scheduling and trying to get the game done. You might even recall that Lavos, in his famous Rage Quit post, he took great pains to ensure he admonished McMegan for his subpar scheduling. In fact, Megan was pretty well known for being very irritating to schedule with for many years. And Lavos was not the only player who had a problem with them. Now, McMegan was not malicious. He was just lazy. There's a big difference because the people we're talking about today, this sort of subgenre, is way more active and I don't want to play. McMegan was like, I want to play, just, don't rush me into it. These players today, who are casually referred to in the community as scheduling terrorists, are actively doing their best to not play the game. So it used to be that there were not really any protections in place if the opponent decided to waste your time. There wasn't a rule like, oh, you have to wait for XYZ minutes and then you can take the activity win. Because, we're not here to have activity wins, right? We're here to get the game played, or so we thought. So people would say, okay, well, your opponent is really late, but, reschedule for another time, or, just wait. You don't want to take an activity win, do you? And you don't, but, of course, this kind of thing did get abused by many people. It's like, oh, well, my team's not ready? Well, I'll just make my opponent wait for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, that regularly happened. There were people faking their availability all the time, saying, oh, I don't have the time, and you're going to have to accommodate me, and, what are you going to do? You're not going to get an activity win for it. So eventually, the rules were changed. You had 30 minutes, you would schedule a time, and you and your opponent had 30 minutes to show up, right? Even this wound up being very abusable because there were some players, I remember in SPL, there were several players who made a habit of showing up at 29 minutes past the scheduled time every time. And I really dislike that, and that's why I don't know what it is in team tournaments. I think it still might be 30 because that gives the opposing team a time to find a substitute just in case. But I know in individual tournaments it's 15, which is much more reasonable. And you think, oh, well, that's not that much time, but it's like, well, you're supposed to schedule for a time you can make it, and if you can't make it, then clearly you have something more important than Pokemon going on. Basically, people were wasting other people's times a lot. But of course, there's a gray area because sometimes the opponent might be nice. It's like, hey, I don't mind that you're 45 minutes late. I want to play the game. Those are great. So now we come to the other side of this coin. The current scheduling terrorists are not those who are persistently late or persistently pushing times. There was an issue this past SPL, if I remember correctly. Was it last SPL? Whatever, my memory's going. About a player, I forget who it was, but a player who was consistently showing up really, really late, just constantly pushing the envelope with like, well, you know, technically not late, and this kind of thing. So this is the other side of that, because now we've got this is a very famous case, so I don't mean any personal attacks by this, and I'm sure the who is now known as the scheduling terrorist based on this incident and many others is a perfectly nice person, but this is just the example that has really made it known to everyone. And I was spurred to make this video not because of this incident, which is, you know, March 31st, a long time ago, but because I keep seeing this. Whenever I check in on the competitive scene, I'm just like, wow, people are taking all these activity wins, you know, just because they can. Which, again, I don't know where the line should be drawn, specifically for things like this. If it's a team tournament and your team is relying on you, yes, of course. Individual tournaments, I'm not sure, but I think there is a subgenre of player who is really going out of their way to not play the game, and we can experience it in this incident. So what happened was Watashi, aka FLCL, had a game against Avarice, and Watashi was 27 minutes late to the game, and got the activity loss. Okay, sure, you know, there are people who... I think you can tell when someone's trying to waste your time and when someone is, you know, earnestly just late for, you know, whatever reason. You know, you could say, oh, well, I have an emergency. I have a family emergency. You know how many family emergencies we used to see back in the day? Oh, I won't be able to make our original time. I have a family emergency. And it just wound up being, well, if you've really got a family emergency, then deal with that. You know, you can't really, because people lied so much. There were people who swore that they've got grandmothers in the hospital, and then you see them on smog tours or not smog tours, this is back in the PO days, but you would see them watching tournament games like an hour later, on a fake name, and it's like, oh, I thought you were the grandmother. No, it was fine. So you really have to. But again, this is why the issue is complicated. So since reading forum posts is not really conducive, I'll just give you a rundown of this forum post. So basically, FLCL is not going to contest the activity loss, but he would like to warn the tournament community about the Walter White of activity fishing. So he's got a sense of humor. Yeah. So. He's basically got a bunch of screenshots which are no longer valid because they're they're from Discord, but basically they were planning on playing on Monday, right? So for those who don't know, these tournaments always start like Sunday night, Monday. So you have a week to get the game done. So if you're going to play on Monday and an activity win goes, now in a team tournament and they don't provide a sub, then it gets more complicated because, you know, weekend activity counts for more than weekdays, but this is where it's a kind of a clear see it when I know it when I see it situation. And play on Monday, late about half an hour, and then his opponent vanished off smog shores. Okay, sure, if you can't play at that time, you can't play at that time. But is it also okay to say, you know, or to pretend like you're unavailable for the entire rest of the week? So for the next few days, Watashi tried to chase his opponent down like a roaming Pokemon to no avail, despite him being active elsewhere. And I don't know what this screen grab... Yeah, so this is just a screen grab of his opponent's activity, which is playing for lots of other tournaments. Basically, the problem is, when you're playing for lots of other tournaments, can you really claim that you didn't have time? Which, yeah. This was from a few hours later. He tried to, I think this is him trying to, like, yeah. So I'll zoom in on this. Watashi asks if he can play for Oris. This is some Oris circuit individual tournament. And Avarice says, tired right now, maybe before something else in the morning, but for now, I'm just going to watch finals. And so basically just, I'm tired, I don't want to play. Okay. But you see the evasion, right? This is not just like, I'm taking the activity win because you missed it, because that would never work. But instead, yeah, when they're both online, then Watashi's opponent is just straight up ignoring him. So, yeah. The day after, so this screen grab isn't there anymore, but you see the pattern that he's just completely ignoring him. And what the... Now, I don't mean this is not like a hit piece on Avarice. There are other players like this right now. And from what I know, Avarice is a good player, but it's kind of... I don't know. Being a good player, whatever, doesn't really have anything to do with trying to evade the game. Matter of fact, it's a lot of good players who feel they have a reputation to protect who happen to try and pull all sorts of stuff to avoid actually playing, and have for years. So, yeah, FLCO says, everyone who I talked to in this community has had a bad experience scheduling with this guy at some point, and he has a reputation. And apparently a few years ago, he tried to fish for an activity win in a finals tiebreak. He deleted my VM. His initial forum message. Yeah, and then some more humor about don't let anyone else, this guy screw you over. And I think there was a recent incident, I don't know who it was, but someone was like saying, hey, I have a genuine emergency, I can't, like, we have some more time to play, right? And this was for a very low stakes tournament. I understand people making up family emergencies for, you know, tournaments they really care about, but, you know, for low stakes tournament, it's just like, just get the game done. Then the response was, I'll be on for the next 10 minutes, and I forget who it was. And yeah, and then there was someone else I know who recently, you know, missed a game on Monday or Tuesday, or no, someone didn't respond to a scheduling thing for a few days, which, to be clear, was their fault. But then the game just didn't get done because the opponent claimed to be completely unavailable. I don't know. So, yeah, it's... I guess it's kind of an indictment on the competitive... okay, this is really not like a majority of it or anything, because it's always some sort of... this is why having the rules in place is really crucial, because... But it's tough to account for everything, because you can't make the window too long, but there, you know, no matter how short the window, both players, or, you know, some players are always going to habitually show up late, and then there are the players who actively do try to avoid the game getting done. And I don't know, even being entitled to an activity win, I think, is more for cases where the opponent is like either completely unavailable or really trying to give you a hard time. For instance, if there was an opponent who was clearly just trying to jerk you around and waste your time, I would have no problem with someone taking an activity win on that in a heartbeat. Because there are people like that who like to give you the runaround and waste your time because it gives them pleasure or something, I don't know. And I don't think that anyone should have to, you know, deal with that. I think that's incredibly lame. So as soon as someone starts, you know, jerking around, it's like, give me a time right now or activity win. That, I think, should be supported by the rules. But when both players are making an earnest attempt to play the game, you know, life happens a little bit. I mean, there are exceptions. Like if it's a big tournament, then look, you got to show up. You know, again, the scheduled time is supposed to work. That's why it's the scheduled time. But yeah, this is not going to ever be a cut and dry situation, no matter what the specifics. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing that, because if it was just one person, it'd be like, oh, okay, it's one person. But it genuinely seems to be well, and it's weird because I feel, you know, very reactionary arguing against it, because again, like I said at the beginning, I have had a lot of experiences with, you know, people showing up late. And, you know, not accidentally, you know, habitually. It's like, oh, I showed up 1 minute before I would have had to take the activity loss, that kind of thing. Actually, it's not even, you know, scheduled times. In Smogan Tour, which is, for those who don't know, a live tournament, where basically the whole appeal is that it's over in a couple hours, max, if you make it all the way to the finals, or if you want to watch the whole thing. The whole appeal is the round goes up, you play your opponent immediately, and that's it. And there were several players who would be trying to counter team you, and like as soon as they saw that their opponent is whoever, and then they're like, okay, well now I'm going to choose the best counter team based on their replays, which by the way was a stupid phenomenon. I have another Smoke and Tour video I want to make soon because I loved Smoke and Tour, but yeah, they would very ridiculously take like 10 minutes to accept a challenge. And I don't know if a rule was ever instated because, again, most people didn't, but there were like certain players. You could even, I'm sure if you asked Blunder, he could say like, oh, dude, it was the Italians. The Italians would try to counter team you. They would take forever to accept the challenge. They needed to ask their Italian buddies for what. Now, again, when I say Italians, I mean a specific group of Italians that was associated with cheating. There are many Italian players who had nothing to do with this. So, yeah, there was and I remember there were, regardless of the little cheating circles that some players had to contend with during Smoke and Tour, there were some players who were kind of, not scheduling terrorists, but watch out, this guy's trying to counter team you with something ridiculous. So yeah, that's basically it. I hope, I don't know, I hope the rules get changed. I hope there's a culture change because remember, it was that long ago. But ghosting used to, for those who don't know, which is basically telling someone else what to do in their battle, which is extremely unfair. That used to be so pervasive. We were like, we're never going to get rid of this. And then the culture basically shifted, or came in and shifted things, basically saying if you ghost or you get ghosted, you're lame, and then it was gone. It's kind of amazingly. So, yeah, so maybe this will come. But I just noticed I keep checking in on the competitive sphere, and this keeps happening. And this is not just this is starting to become a pattern. So, yeah, thanks for watching / listening. Hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next one.